Broadcasting live from the IRSMedic studios, it's Parental Advisory. Hey.
Hey there, Claudine.
We are live.
We are live today. We got off to a little bit of a late start this morning. We were doing some exciting things with the rest of the team. But
Yes.
we are live now, and I think we're going to have a great show because we're going to talk about something that I find so fascinating. Bankruptcy.
It actually brings up a lot of emotions in people.
You mentioned bankruptcy to somebody, it's a weird sort of thing.
Yeah.
And, you know, for us, we deal with people with kind of horrible credit all day long. And so for me, I'll just tell somebody, oh, just file bankruptcy. And I kind of forget there's sort of a person behind that.
Mm-hmm.
And the reaction's like, whoa, what do you mean? What do you mean? And no, I can't do that. I can't do that. And one story in particular I learned years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Let me give you a little setup for this story. When I started tax resolution, I would get names of people with federal tax liens.
Okay.
One of the great pleasures of when you owe the IRS a large sum of money, even back then, not large, they would send it out to you if you owed 50 cents. They really did.
Wow.
They would tell the world about the existence of your debt with the IRS through a notice of federal tax lien.
Mm-hmm.
So you could buy this list from a vendor who goes around and collects this information from Recorded, and then you take that list and then you send a mailing out.
Okay.
When I started, I had the personal touch, though. I actually went down to the town hall and hand wrote the names because I'm like, will this really work? With
Yeah.
you know, and I actually, you're actually able to get better information because the people, when you're buying the list, they're having the same lazy people spell the names incorrectly
Oh,
too.
yeah.
You're like, oh, you know, and so I was actually, oh, here, this person. Then, you know, it's in my town. I'm like, oh.
Oh. So.
Well, and then some people are like, okay, I'm not going to send a letter to them.
Yeah.
No.
No.
I don't. No, thank you. But as I got bigger, I would buy the list and I would start to send out up to 2,000, 5,000 letters in Connecticut.
Oh, just so it was local.
Local. I would just say, you know, hey, look, if you're looking for someone local, even though we help people around the country, I would just figure it. I'm like, well, why would I send a mailing to somebody, you know, way out there? I'll just send it local. I mean, my list was already 5,000 or 8,000. I don't think I needed it much bigger than that. We really couldn't handle the business. And so I would send out things. I tried to be different. And by the way, one of the great things that happens when you have this federal tax lien, usually what happens is you find out you have a federal tax lien not from the IRS first, but rather from the amount of junk mail you receive. One day.
That's weird. I'm just going to get rid of that. Oh, wait. Oh, I got 12.
One day you have no mail at all. Then the next day you have a stack. They're all about federal tax issues. And you're like, well, I know I owe the IRS something, but why today did 12 different people decide to send me mail? That's not a good thing. And then maybe, 5-6 days later, there comes the letter from the IRS. Hey, we filed a notice of federal tax lien against you. Send this if you disagree. But by that time, it's already public knowledge, and now the onslaught of the worst junk mail ever ensues. So I like to stand out from that. I didn't want to have the kind of scammy, horrible undercurrent that everybody else was doing. So I tried to give out information to say, hey, look, you know what? Here's some tips you could use. There's hope to solve a tax problem.
Nice.
Everything could be made better. Try to keep a positive, upbeat, attitude about it.
Right.
And so what sparked this marketing idea was just some conversations I had with some people, and I'll get into those. But I realized so many taxpayers didn't know that they could file Chapter 7 bankruptcy to discharge personal tax debts and wipe them out entirely.
Right.
And they already had other kind of tax debts. So I'm like, hey, you know what? I'm going to be a great guy. I want to be that great guy, and I want to be helpful to people and give them that great news that bankruptcy could be an option to get rid of their tax debt permanently.
Okay.
Right? Okay, so that's the intent. So I sent out the 5,000 letters or whatever. My vendor sent them out.
Yep.
And then the phone started ringing. And instead of, hey, thanks so much for sharing that information with us, we really appreciate it, my staff indicated that never send out a letter like that again, or we will quit.
Why?
When you're mentioning bankruptcy with somebody, it is so personal. The calls, the emails we got from people were just, every expletive in the world directed to me, you scumbag, mother, mama, blah, 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 blah. You dirtbag. Oh, guess what? Somebody glitter bombed us.
Are you serious?
Yes, that was. We did it. Those who don't know what glitter bomb is, you send an email, you send the letter. He actually put the letter that I sent back in an envelope. He put glitter in it, opened it up, and it went on the carpet. And I was like, oh my, that was
pretty cool.
That was pretty cool.
Thanks.
So if you're out there, I did get it. And thank you. You made me laugh. And the letter was, like, you're a scumbag and all that.
Well, I think it's probably partly because if somebody gets to the point where they're going to file bankruptcy, it's them putting their hands up and saying, I failed, which most people don't want to do.
Right.
And not only did I fail, but everybody's going to know I failed.
Right. So, and I think that's one of the things. And I remember years ago in the Wall Street Journal or some print advertising, there was something about Date Check or something like that. It was a service you could get to do a background check on your prospective mates.
Ew.
You're right. You're like, oh, I'm dating this person. They seem really, really on the up and up, but let me just make sure. I'll hire this service to do a background check on them. And then the ad showed like somewhat like an attractive woman, and like her brother was like giving her the news about this guy she was dating, and the list said filed bankruptcy.
Oh no!
2004. Watch out. And I was just like, really?
That's really weird.
Would that make you, if you found out that your husband filed bankruptcy
10 years ago?
10 years ago, do you think that would say, oh, you know what? You look great.
You treat me so nice.
You're so positive. You're a go-getter.
Really cute.
You're cute. You're so much fun to be around with all the time.
But
yeah,
I'm gonna have to break this off.
I found out about it.
Absolutely
not. Right. If that's the decision that somebody was going to make, maybe it's better. Maybe it's better that you move on to somebody who isn't going to be so hung up on a bankruptcy. I mean, come on. I mean, only everybody files it. I mean, it's so common. It's
perhaps a felony or something.
There's
that
one.
might. Yes.
Yeah, felony and bankruptcy. They're treated like equals. Yeah, about the same.
About the same.
Yeah. Here you got behind on your bills. Here you
beat up an old lady and stole her purse.
Yeah.
About the same. Yeah.
About the same. Right. So I think that's just that crazy thing, and I think people having to accept that, oh man, I guess I got to deal with it.
Yep.
And they just don't like that. And they're fine owing hundreds of thousands of dollars to the IRS or these other creditors.
Yeah.
That they're not going to pay. I mean, there's no way. I mean, that's why bankruptcy exists, because the law realizes, look, man, you're never going to pay this back. There's no point in punishing you with this debt that you can't get out of. You know what? Why don't you, whatever you have, let's just call it quits. Let's get your free card. Start over again. Bankruptcy has been around for hundreds of years.
That's a really good point.
It's like they realize that life can get out of control. And the thing is most people are already bankrupt. You're right, like you're bankrupt. Why don't you file for bankruptcy protections now?
Yeah.
You're insolvent, you're bankrupt, just now do what the law allows you to do.
Yep.
So I just wish people would, I mean, I know it's easier to tell someone else when if it was me, I'd probably take it a little differently, but it still can be a really great tool for people to use. And I think just getting beyond the emotional aspect, and people are trying to hold off, and they're just like, no, I'm going to make it. And so many of our clients where we're trying to say, it's like, look, you're going to pay this to the IRS if you file bankruptcy. You know what? You can do a lot more better things. You really need to start working on saving something for retirement and just making no dent in these debts. You're not even carrying the interest. You're not even covering the interest with your repayment.
So it's possible to bounce back after bankruptcy?
Oh, God, it happens all the time. You know what? I looked right before I checked. Right before this, guess how many times? Now, Donald Trump never filed personal bankruptcy. He filed business bankruptcy 4 times.
No kidding.
Do you think he thinks 1 second about it's
going to look good.
This is like while he's flying around in his Sikorsky helicopter.
His gold jet.
He's thinking about those 4 bankruptcies.
They're hurting.
Those 4 bankruptcies. Geez, all those unsecured creditors. I I left with nothing. Oh.
No.
Those 4 strategic bankruptcies I used. Right. So it's part of the law. I mean, that's just the thing. It's just as legal as getting married. It's the law. It allows you to do it. It's there for a reason. And so I think one of the, you have the objections to it. And I also learned about marketing. You don't market it, even though we help out people all the time.
Yeah, wait till you get them face to face. You know the situation, can explain the circumstances, and inform them and educate them on how it's actually can work out for them.
Yeah. A lot of people don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people don't know you could use bankruptcy to get rid of it. I was talking to a CPA of a client to say, well, if our offer and compromise fails, I think it's going to get this amount. This seems to be about amount, just, can't guarantee. If it fails, I'll file bankruptcy, or because I don't file bankruptcy. Then he'll pay nothing. He'll be discharged. And the bankruptcy guy was like, what are you talking about? I'm like, I don't know. We're, Chapter 7. I don't do it, but somebody, and it was somebody, he lived in New York. We could find a New York attorney to file the bankruptcy. You can't file bankruptcy to get rid of taxes.
This is an IRS agent?
No, this is a CPA who's telling me. I'm like, I don't know. What do you? And I'm like, he said it with such certainty. I'm like, all right, but I just know people who have. I mean, I've looked at the transcripts and no, it works. I'm like, no, it definitely does the trick. And the guy he's like, you're not going to hire this guy. He's a liar. He's a scumbag.
Oh.
Like, what?
But I'm not. Like,
help?
Really not.
Help? And so finally, I think somebody was able to correct him. And he almost sounded like an apology, but it wasn't quite. But, right, a CPA is not the only ones who don't know.
Yeah.
Some attorneys don't. Also, IRS agents. I had an IRS agent in our conference room tell my client that they couldn't use bankruptcy to discharge personal tax debts. And this was, this was after the CPA told me. So I was I'm a little more armed for it now. And so she says, you can't, because it was a deal. We're trying to negotiate the audit down. We're like, look, we're willing to pay 30 on this. She goes, well, I'll meet you at 60. I'm like, well, 60 we can't pay. We're not going to do it. Why don't? Because if we're at 60, we'll file bankruptcy, get rid of the whole thing. And then she goes, you can't file bankruptcy to get rid of your tax debt. And so I was like, okay.
Excuse me for just a moment.
Excuse me. So I walked over to my cabinet and I pulled out one of the earliest books I got, How to Deal with the IRS. So I just quietly went over. It's a purple book. I opened it up to the chapter on bankruptcy. I said, here, they went through a lot of effort, right, to make it look like, but just read up here. And she was honestly, she didn't know. She was like, holy crap, you can.
Thanks, Anthony.
Yeah, well, all right.
I didn't learn in college.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's another great example of the law is so convoluted and there's so much information to learn that even the IRS agents don't know everything.
She was a really experienced examiner, and she was actually a good examiner, and we actually got along pretty good. It was just that one little testy spot there. And then she's like, wow, how did I go on not knowing this really important fact?
Yeah.
And that's kind of the nature of the law. Yeah.
And now what about scam resolution companies? Do you trust them?
No. And they're another area of miscommunication, and I'm not going to mention the firm that did this, and it was really underhanded. They're still around, and they're still doing other things. I don't know how much longer they're going to be around because I've been watching their Yelp ratings that were magically high for about a year, and then we found their marketing representative on LinkedIn, or their ex-marketing representative on LinkedIn, who bragged about the marketing budget they had. And we could tell right by the dates that the gentleman worked there, these awesome Yelp reviews were all there. Then all of a sudden this gentleman leaves the job. All the positive Yelp reviews go away, and now they're all sort of negative.
Ooh, okay.
Oh, what happened there? So it's looks like, all right, so you were doing a little bit of manipulation, and now things are catching up to you. And I think just last month they had 5 negative reviews. So it's always that's showing a trajectory. 5 is bad. That's a bad thing. But they were sending out some marketing things where they were intentionally misleading people to tell them that they couldn't file bankruptcy to get rid of tax debts. And the reason why is they're just some tax resolution outfit, and all they care about is getting people to hire them to submit an offer and compromise.
Right.
If someone files bankruptcy,
They don't need you.
They're thinking, right, which is and may not be true anyway. But their belief is like, well, there's no money in for us, so we'll just tell people you can't do it, then more money for us. And so I kind of called them out on it and was on my website, and then their counsel called, well, what did you do? That's our, that you're mentioning our marketing, because I copied and pasted their marketing material that did it. So I removed it from the website just because they were claiming a trademark to their, I'm like, all right, whatever.
Yeah.
You guys are dirtbags. You're not going to be around for long. But they're another source of misinformation. I don't file bankruptcy myself, but I still want people to do the right thing. And
Right.
then usually bankruptcy is only part of it, because usually there's other years, or you have to get the case to a point where you can file bankruptcy. You just can't magic wand it away. Usually you have to do some legwork in order to get it to work.
Got it. So bankruptcy is a viable option. It doesn't mean that you're a failure. You're not going to be wearing a scarlet B.
No, and it's not a felony. It's just like a lot of other people. Yeah.
From the notes I have here that you wrote up, it seems you're pretty passionate about Chapter 13 in particular.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about that and some other things right after this on Parental Advisory. Coming up Monday on Parental Advisory, Anthony's flat tax proposal. Has he come up with an idea that's both constitutional and can help raise revenue? Be sure to visit our Facebook page to follow us and submit story ideas. And thanks to our sponsor, IRSMedic, real tax attorneys for tough tax problems. Visit IRSMedic.com for the latest news on the disaster that is the U.S. tax code. Boy, I sound stuffy.
I don't hear it.
That was not
I
great.
don't hear it.
All right, so we are back live with Parental Advisory talking about bankruptcy and bankruptcy objections in particular.
Bankruptcy objections, and the biggest objections is the ignorance that people just don't know that they can actually use it, and I think the ignorance of what it actually means, that the scarlet B, and it's not what you think it is. And if someone's going, I heard, this is something I heard from a client of ours who was in, believe it or not, car sales. He said that he actually liked to see bankruptcies on a credit score, recent one, because he says, well, I know they can't file bankruptcy for another 8 years.
It's fantastic.
Right? It's like, well, the car loan's 5 years, and you can't file. Sure.
Yeah.
And then they get to charge a higher rate.
Yep.
Because, well, you have a bankruptcy, right?
Yep.
You have a bankruptcy, so we're going to give you a horrible credit score, and we know you can't file it. So it's really a great deal for the creditor. And I mean, that's sort of the reason, why it does definitely negatively affect your credit. Now, you say you check your credit score every day.
Not every day.
Not every day.
I have an American Express account, and now it's one of those where you can check it and it won't affect your credit score.
Okay.
But I am pretty anal retentive about my credit score.
Okay.
I like to keep an eye on it. I pay my bills like literally the minute they show up.
Okay.
Yeah.
So your credit score is pretty high?
It's over 800.
Wow.
Yeah. I geek out about my credit score. I'm such a dork. I can't stand it.
I would notice some weird things about credit scores. My wife works for me. Okay. And I know her credit score. Okay. And she knows mine. Hers is always higher than mine. And the reason why is because she has a job. She has a W-2 job.
Okay.
Working for me. I'm self-employed.
You're risky, Anthony.
Yeah,
very risky.
You're self-employed there, so the chances of you, what's your wife?
Yeah, we'll give her a mortgage.
Right on. So there's just some strange things that you just like. It's a number, That's really what it is. It's a number. It's not something that it's not your value as a human being. And so many of our clients with back taxes, I mean, their credit scores are, they've always been low.
Yep.
Sometimes, what? I don't think their kids love them any less, though.
Yeah.
It's just like it's low, and that's their own. The credit agencies kind of just invented this on their own.
Yeah.
And then you could, and then there's games you can play too, to get it back up. So just like anything, if it's that big of a deal, you can always get it back up. And again, my car dealer friend was showing me some of the things that you could do, even with a bankruptcy. Like, watch this. You go like this, you go like this, you'll be back up here, no problem.
Oh, wow.
Even with a bankruptcy.
Right.
So there's stuff. It's like, so if it's that important to you, there are ways.
Yep.
A little bit of patience, you can get it, back up to where you're not overpaying for credit.
Good.
Yeah. So some You mentioned before the break some bankruptcy things I don't like, though. I don't like, just because I like Chapter 7 bankruptcy, which is the bankruptcy where it's a personal bankruptcy where you discharge your debts. And discharge means they're gone.
Wow.
Okay, gone. Unless there's some assets that the trustee would apply to them. But usually in most cases,
there's not much left.
There's just there's just debts. So there's really not a fight over the assets. And so many of the assets, if there's any, are exempt, or the people will continue to pay on their cars. So there's really nothing there. It's just taking their debt and wiping it out. There's really not much to it. So you can see why I'd be a big fan of that, if you can. Now, there's some kind of taxes you can't do that with, like trust fund taxes, those employer taxes we were talking about the other day.
Yes.
Yeah, not going to be able to do that because they're going to say, that wasn't even your money. You're not going to take, that wasn't even your money. We're not going to discharge that.
Yeah.
And new tax debts, and then if there's the returns weren't filed on time, you might have a problem, depending on where you live, and then depending on the attorney you hire.
Okay.
And then also there's a time period you have to wait in order to do it. Then you also have to make sure that you pass the test for it. Now, I'm not a bankruptcy attorney, so I can't tell you, but it's not the same test as if you had credit card debt.
Okay.
Most people think of it, no, but I can't. I already looked into bankruptcy for my credit card debt, and I don't qualify because whatever it is.
Oh, okay.
Well, here's the thing with tax debt, it could be actually helpful because now you qualify for that Chapter 7 overall, and now you could get rid of your credit card debt that you couldn't have alone.
Yep.
So, a lot of times I mention, people come into the office and I'll talk to them like, hey, look, I want to settle my tax debt. And sometimes I talk to them and my conversation's 3 minutes and I'm writing down the name of a local bankruptcy attorney because they're like, what? I can? Yeah. Oh, great.
Thanks.
Right. They're not thinking of that scarlet bee at all. They're like, awesome.
Yep.
All right, cool. So that happens sometimes. One that I do see come up a lot is a Chapter 13.
All right, what's that?
Chapter 13, it doesn't discharge it. It's one where you're allowed to give priority over to certain creditors, but you're going to be repaying tax debts. Okay. And there's times where you'll have to do that with tax debt, but I don't like it because the repayments that I usually see are much higher than if you were just dealing with the IRS.
Oh, no
loan.
kidding. So you end up paying more.
You end up paying more, right? And I've seen this where somebody just comes in, I'm in a Chapter 13, we're paying the IRS, we're paying this person, and I'm looking at their financials like, well, there's not enough here.
Yeah.
You don't have enough money to pay your current taxes. So all you're doing is running up a new tax liability for next year that will default this anyway that's ongoing. You're not getting anywhere with this 13. You have this bankruptcy going on right now that it's not helping you out anyway. And there's circumstances where it can work, but mostly it's like we prefer. I haven't seen out. I always ask people. I'm like, have you ever seen a 13 really, really be the thing? And people have one or two examples, but usually don't do the 13 unless you actually have to, and you're better off dealing with the IRS on yourself. And you might be able, and you also or directly,
right.
You might be able to convert a 13 into a 7 and sometimes too to discharge it if you can also get some time going. Yeah. And also that statute of limitations the IRS has to collect, it stops when you're in bankruptcy. So you're paying that, and if you don't pay, well, the IRS now still has the full time to get you.
Oh, wow.
But if you're dealing with the IRS one-on-one with a partial payment installment agreement or something, you're getting that clock away. And so that's really one of the reasons why I like it. And then also in some cases, there's this weird sort of interest that could erupt, something called gap interest, which while you thought you were paying, basically you have a nasty surprise at the end that can apply in some certain trust fund cases. Yep. And, it catches a lot of people by surprise, even some bankruptcy attorneys when you didn't tell your client that, oh, yeah, there's going to be another $40,000 you're going to have to come up with.
Oh, snap.
Oh, yeah, that's kind of rough. So there's just a lot of reasons I don't like 13. Chapter 11 is really what we see for corporations when they're doing it.
That's Donald Trump?
Donald Trump, yep. He's, you're doing 11. Individuals can do an 11. It's very rare. And then there's some weird bankruptcies. I think Chapter 9 is for municipalities when they're going to go bankrupt. Chapter 12, I believe, is for fishers and farmers.
I saw that one.
Fishers, right. Well, okay.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, which is basically a 13, but just specific for fishers and farmers, family farmers. Mm-hmm. And I think that's been around. Those specific rules, more favorable, have been around for over 100 years because fishers and family farms falling on hard times
Yep.
comes with the turf. It's like, that's like
You
the job.
expect it.
Right. It's like you're going to have 1 year interrupted by years of failure.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what the law expects, and
Yep.
that's why it's written that way. What I like to see, though, and so I don't like 13s. I like dealing with the IRS 101. You actually can use the threat, and this is a difficult, not the easiest one to propose, because let me just, you might get it. All right, pretend you're an IRS agent.
Okay.
Okay, and you're trying to deal with a taxpayer who owes a lot of money, hasn't paid a lot of money in a long time. Okay. And according to your calculations, this poor person can afford to repay on a debt of $1 million, $300,000.
Okay.
According to your calculations.
Yeah.
Okay. And now I represent that client. He doesn't want to pay $300,000.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So here's our negotiations. So I see you want $300,000, and I agree those calculations are correct. I'd like to pay less. Can I pay less?
No.
Okay. I understand why you can't take that. However, just if my client does file Chapter 7 bankruptcy in a year, he's going to discharge the entire debt, meaning you're left to what you can collect from him in the remaining year, and that is only $50,000. So what I'd offer instead of $300,000 is $50,000, because that's all you can get if he files bankruptcy.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's sort of cool.
Yeah, well, you do that, but you could offend someone at the IRS to say, well, F you.
Uh-huh.
You're going to dirtbag us like that?
No, 300,000.
No, 300, $1 million, right?
2 million.
So it's a delicate sort of way you want to approach it, where you're like, okay, look, we're just going by the numbers. According to this schedule, make it about the numbers, not about somebody, using it about,
Yep.
And then, we've gotten them through that way. We're like, okay, you bring up a really good point.
Yeah.
And now that, and I mean, the thing is, it's better be the truth too.
Yes.
And then the client's like, well, you know what? And usually in that case, you don't go with like the lowest amount. Well, okay, you'll only in the next year you'll get $50,000 from them. Mm-hmm. They file bankruptcy, then the IRS gets nothing. Because in that case, the IRS said, well, then fine, do that.
Yep.
File bankruptcy. So you need to sweeten the pot. Like, hey, you know what? We'll give you a double. We'll give you double what you would get if he did that. That way they're getting something, because now the client doesn't have to file bankruptcy.
Right.
That way you're not jamming their face in it a
Yep.
little bit. So that's a nice little
Wow, and that goes back
negotiation.
to our last show that you actually can negotiate with the IRS.
Oh yeah,
Amazing.
all the time. There's right ways to do it.
And that's why you do that for other people, because us regular folk can't figure that out. So bankruptcy, yes, viable option. And what I'm excited about is Monday's show.
Yeah.
Your flat tax proposal. I can't wait to hear it.
It came to me over years, and this is one that it makes the most sense of anything I've heard. And we have the presidential people, and Donald Trump,
Yes.
who's always in the news. God bless him.
Mm-hmm.
He had his tax proposal, and everyone comes out with their tax proposals. And I look at them, and I guess more of the Republicans I'm disappointed in. Mm-hmm. I'm far more disappointed in their lack of imagination, because their proposals are always far more ambitious than what the original Revenue Act of 1913 was. Mm-hmm. And they're supposed to be the party of limited government, and they're going back like, okay, so you're basically offering what the proposal was of 1926. And then we knew what happened. Right. It gets out of control immediately. So you need to put some actual protections in there for taxpayers. And also, as someone who is, somewhat of a free market person, guess what? There are dirtbag corporations out there. They exist. Mm-hmm. It does happen.
Yep.
It's not, you need to have some sort of tax code that makes sure, God, I'm going to hate myself for saying it, corporations pay their fair share. I hate myself for saying that. And that's why it's going to be something that I've never heard anyone else propose before. And I think it's something where somebody from any part of the political spectrum could say, oh, yeah, that is actually a really good idea.
Ooh, I'm excited.
All
Who
right.
knew you could get this excited about taxes? That's really
it's
weird.
Coming.
Anthony for president. All right, that's Monday. Thanks for joining us live on Parental Advisory. Thanks for joining Parental Advisory, hosted by Anthony Parent, produced by Claudine Gindel, that's me, engineered by Chris Chen. For more podcasts, visit our website at parentaladvisoryshow.com and like us on Facebook to submit story ideas. We'd like to thank our sponsors, IRSMedic.com, the law offices of Parent, and Wynn, LLP, real tax attorneys for tough tax problems.